Hello and welcome, everyone. Please give me a one in the chat to make sure that, so I know that we are streaming, that everything is going well. I'm just going to move my mic closer. So, welcome. Let me also confirm. Yeah. Yes, we have a stream. Welcome. So, thank you all for being here. I'm here with Thunderous One. Tonight, we're going to be talking about MOONotheism, which is the pagan origins of Islam. And Thunderous, thank you for joining me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lloyd, for inviting me back on your show again this evening.
Now, of course, as everyone knows, I was away for a while. I was doing some intense research on the history of, well, socialism, the modern atheist movement, and how the two are related. So we have Pro-Life Chloe, welcome. We have Thunderous One in the chat. Hey, you have a twin in the chat, Thunderous. We have
Yes.
the Duza Dude. We have XYZ. Thank you all for being here. We have Carl Brown, Sola Scriptura, Gina Kokis, and the Ethnos. Yes, so Thunderous, you wanted to say a few things?
Yes, for those who are have subscribed to my channel, they'll probably realise that my channel is not there anymore. It has been deleted by YouTube because I'd obviously put some material up that contravened their free speech rules. I've obviously upset some people or somewhere along the line. The material I'd actually been putting up was against atheism, and started doing a series about the world being moulded, the world being chaperoned, the world being guided and made in the image of the atheists, and that's with reference to many of the things that are sickening and appalling in the world today, from birth, from the age of someone being born, to things that are taking place up to people in their 20s and 30s, and all the deviant lifestyles and such. But obviously, so I've said a few things that have upset a few people. My channel was deleted, but I've got a new channel now. I'm slowly putting more the material back up. So if I can ask people to resubscribe if they've subscribed before, and I will be putting the material back on again. You're just going to have to be patient with me. So thank you, Lloyd, for giving me this opportunity to explain what's happened to my channel.
All right, yeah. So his channel got deleted shortly after you and I did a little talk together. Yeah, sorry about the echo. I've just fixed that. Yeah, there's been a software change to OBS. The interface works differently now, and it's So I've had to update, make changes. So sorry about the echo, but that is fixed now. Yeah. Okay, so tonight we are talking about Islamic monotheism and the moon gods of Babylon. So let me jump on this and we'll just dive right in. Right, I'd like to go about an hour maximum. And for those who don't know, I've been starting a new series on atheism, but it's the history of atheism, going back basically to the 18th century, to the founding of socialism as a religion. Right, thank you, Dragon. Sorry about the echo. Yeah, I just updated the configuration here. So socialism was founded as religion. It was founded as an atheistic religion, basically a ripoff of Christianity. So basically Christianity minus a god. And secular humanism is part and parcel of this. And it is also a religion. It is legally registered as a religion. It is exempt from tax as a church. So yeah, it gets a religious tax exemption, etc., etc. So secular humanism, and yeah, so it's a very interesting series. So I've got 3 shows up at the moment, and we will be doing more of these soon on Thaddeus' channel as well. And I'll be discussing this subject in depth. But we've been suffering from baseless, dishonest attacks from atheists for a long time, with claims of that Christianity is the most violent, evil ideology to ever exist and has caused more death and destruction. Well, in 77 years of the 20th century, atheist governments murdered more people than all religions combined have done in the last 1,900 years. So I have the numbers, I've played the numbers, I've showed people the statistics, I have very, very detailed figures on this. And of course, not a single atheist has actually bothered to challenge me on the facts. All I get is, you're wrong. Okay, what am I wrong about? You're just wrong. Okay, can you be specific? You're wrong. I don't have time for this. And that's it. Okay, so, which just shows you how, there's been lots of swearing, huge amounts of swearing. So yeah, that just shows how rational and logical and scientific these atheists are. No, they have no answer. So, okay, so guys, we're going to talk about the word mu. because we're talking about Makoraba. Muslims have for a long time been claiming that Makoraba means Mecca. Now, we have placed Makoraba in the past. We've placed it in Yemen, right? South of Saudi Arabia, of course. And we know that it is not in Mecca where they claim today in Saudi. So we need to look a little bit more at this term Makoraba, which is the Latinization of the term Mukaraba. And we're going to look at Mukaraba and Abd al-Malik and their commonalities and how the one morphed into the other. Any comment before we begin, Thunderous?
We're not looking at Becca then. We're not looking at the folic
No, we're going to be ignoring Becca for now.
Oh, good.
Got better things to do. So, okay, now we need to look at this prefix word here, mu, okay, or mu, right? So we need to look a little bit at Arabic grammar and what this word means to us. One must have true faith, and that is so true, Dan, yeah. So my last 3 shows were on atheism, and I will be coming back to that topic in depth, but it's historical. And yeah, it's the history they have is embarrassing for them, and I am going to do my level best to detail it in the most gruesome way possible.
Can I just add on that, because you've kindly invited me to have the discussion on the atheists. I would just like to say that it's not just the history, which you're going to bring a fantastic amount, but it's also the implication as well, the scientific implication of the atheist and their worldview, which is nothing more than mere material. So there's a lot we're going to be unpacking when we go
how
through
life becomes worthless.
Yeah.
So now the Sharia, which is Islamic law, the Islamic legal system. Remember, Islam is a deen. A deen is a political system on par with Nazism or communism or fascism. It enables now notice this term Muslims to bring their lives in line with the will of Allah. A Muslim is Sharia compliant. The word Muslim contains in Arabic, contains in its Arabic meaning its definition, right? So the word Muslim in Arabic has 2 parts, the mu prefix and the triliteral root of the word Islam, SLM. Now we have looked in the past at the root SLM, and its original use was for Shalim, the star god, was a pagan god. So SLM originally, its first application was for the star god, and this was one of the gods of the Islamic pantheon, at least of the Arab pantheon of the day. Now the root word Islam is a verbal noun that means submission, at least in modern context. When mu is prefixed to such a root in Arabic, the resulting noun means a person who does the thing that the word denotes. Like if I called you a mu carpenter, then you would be one who does carpentry, right? A mu horse rider would be one who rides horses, one who does the thing in the next word. A Muslim is one who submits. Now to what? Now, of course, Allah's will, which is the Sharia, which is Islamic law. Allah's will is explicated. The exegesis of what Allah wants is in the Islamic law. A Muslim is thus, by definition, Sharia adherent. He follows the Sharia because that's what the word actually means. If someone claims to be a Muslim or converts to Islam or was born into Islam but does not apostatize or separate from it, then it is reasonable to conclude that such a person is Sharia compliant. At a minimum, it is implied, and unless and until demonstrated otherwise, this person does the thing which is implied by the SLM. He submits to Allah. One who surrenders, agreed. You surrender your will, you surrender your mind, you surrender total. It's totalism. It's not. It's from a psychological standpoint. It's totalism. It's total surrender. It's Thunderous?
When you've done the comparison to the Islamic doctrine as far as angels are concerned, and then you look at the physical creation in humans, the angels in Allah's heaven have no free will. They can't make choices. They just do as they're ordered. Do you not see in the physical context the same reality with humans?
This is in theory what they want, yes.
Yeah.
You submit completely.
Exactly that.
Yeah, no, it's totalist. It's not even totalitarian, it's totalist.
So in effect then, when you consider it, the irony is then in Islam that their shaitan and the jinn are actually the real heroes in all of this. Because they're the ones that have the true free will and the true way to, if you like, right to make decisions and such. Everything else is subservient to what Allah demands of them, with no use of free will.
Interesting, yeah. And Zahar says, now deen makes more sense. It's a political system which requires absolute obedience. And in fact, it requires subjection. So you have to rule with absolute authority over people. It is totalitarian explicitly within its meaning. Yes, Thunderous?
Yeah, I was to say, because the ultimate paradox, as far as the Bible is concerned, is Adam in the Garden of Eden, where he demonstrated his free will with the law of, as it was for him, to not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. So without that tree, the paradox being that without law there is no free will, without free will there is no law. So Adam's free will was demonstrated by obedience to the law. He was obedient via free will. But we don't see free will in the same context with Islam. The angels don't have free will to make decisions to be subservient to Islam, to Allah in heavens. Neither does in this context you are under obligation to be obedient to Allah. It's not through your free will that you're obedient to Allah.
Correct.
Yeah. So the real heroes in this are actually the jinn. Then,
interesting point. We should flesh that out another time when we get back into Sharia itself.
Sorry.
No, but you're right. Yeah, but within the Sharia, this is laid out that as you point out. But let's not get too far off track. But very valuable points. Now, the converse is also true. One who does not submit to the Sharia, one who does not adhere to the Sharia, does not meet the linguistic definition of a Muslim. He doesn't do submission. He doesn't do this surrender. Now, Sharia is defined and understood by Islamic scholars to be all-encompassing. It is a legal, military, doctrinal system of government that features some religious beliefs, right? It's a pseudo-religion, as it were. It's a political system, and in fact, these religious beliefs are entirely optional. It's entirely optional. They are not compulsory within the structure of the deen. It is binding for Muslims, as the word Muslim dictates. And Sharia includes a multitude of obligations, like you have to believe in the oneness of Allah, pray 5 times a day, avoid eating pork, and jihad. Understand, Islam is a revolutionary religion, just like you have revolutionary communism, and jihad is its form of revolution to establish Islam. So, and you have Muslims who, those who are, all who are Muslim by birth or conversion are obligated to actively support the establishment of a universal government system, a caliphate or an imamate. So understand the political nature of what this is, right? Based on Sharia and the replacement by means of jihad of any political system not governed by Sharia, which is identical to the goals of Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism. It's identical to the goals of socialism, right? So these are both political systems masquerading as religions. They have exactly the same structure and exactly the same intent. So this commandment to Islamic supremacism is most problematic for non-Muslims. It's an issue for us. Now, I'm just going to read a comment, and then those created from light and dust have no free will. However, those who are created from fire have free will. No wonder that gnosis is so absurd. Yeah, that's fantastic. And Zahar, that's true. So the beings created from light and dust have no free will. However, those who are created from fire have free will. Yeah. And also, of course, we can look at the Gnostic texts, which so many people point to. They have literally zero archaeological value. They provide zero real-world information. So, whereas biblically, you know that the Bible has great archaeological value. So these are simply fairy tales. They are myths. When you stray from the Logos, you stray towards myth. Okay, moving on. Now, the term Makkah, right? This is what Muslims like to claim is Mecca. And they claim that Ptolemy in the 2nd century, he discussed Makkah as location of Mecca. So Mecca was not. This is how they try to prove, because we know there's no evidence before roughly the year 800 for Mecca whatsoever. And I have a huge amount of information on the Mecca story that I need to go into at some point. But yeah, this whole Mecca thing, there's just too much evidence against it. I need to get those slides done at some point. So Makkah, the what? From Ma to Mu. So this is a very short jump from Ma to Mu, from the Yemeni Arabic to the Saudi Arabic. Makkah is easily derived from the word Mukaraba. Mukaraba. Remember, these people from Yemen, they were trading with the Greeks. They were trading with the Romans. They went as far as India, possibly even China. So they were trading all the way into Turkey. So they were constantly traveling, and words would switch between cultures this way. They were the Mukaraba. They were serving the Mukaraba. The Mukaraba are priest kings, or shall we say technically warrior priest kings, who served the will of Allah, and Allah's name was Makkah. Right? So the king of Yemen, the god of Yemen was Al-Makkah. And under Islam, the caliphate or the Khalifa the leader is called the Amir al-Mu'minin, the Menin, right? Technically, in Islam, this would mean those who believe, right? The believers. And those who believe, those who do the work of believing. Any comment from you, Thunders, before I go on?
I'm just listening to what you're saying at the moment.
Okay, so Al-Makkah, so understand the term Makkah, the city, you've heard of it, Makkah in Arabic, was previously the main god of Yemen, and these guys conquered and controlled Arabia for hundreds of years, right? They had an empire going back 1,000 years, right, to roughly 800 BC. So their main god, which was the Babylonian pantheon, they called their main god of the Babylonian pantheon Makkah. Now, this is important. These are important. This Mu'minin. Amir al-Mu'minin, the commander of the believers. Okay, the commander of the believers. And you have Amir al-Muslimin. Now, this term Muslimin actually only entered common usage later, right? So the Muslims were originally called the Mu'minin, just the generic term, the believers. And in fact, there's lots of evidence for an ecumenical movement where they were believers in monotheism, specifically believers in monotheism like the Jews and like the Christians. But then there was a split, and they needed to identify themselves as a separate group. When they splintered away, they needed to give themselves a separate identity, and that's when they took on the term Muslimin. So, Amir al-Muslimin, the commander of the Muslims, a title which the Almoravids first assumed. The Almoravids were a minor group within the Abbasid Caliphate. So, the Amir al-Muslimin, the Lord of the Muslims, a title which the Almoravids first assumed, in contradistinction to the Amir al-Mu'minin. This was the term for them. This was the wide term for these people. And the latter title was borne by independent dynasties. The Almoravids, however, recognized the supremacy of the Abbasids and did not wish to arrogate to themselves this title of the caliphs. They didn't want to be the Mu'minin, so they became the Muslimin. So they established a kind of sub-caliphate. And then later on, obviously the Abbasids were overthrown, and then you had a different caliphate come in, but then they needed a separate identity, not the generic believers. They weren't those believers anymore. They were no longer part of this ecumenical group. They became the Muslimin. Your thoughts, Thunders, before I go on?
No, just the point there. So when the split came, so that, is it analogous to, so when Muhammad was alive, there were Muslims, but then when he died and the split became between, say, Sunni and Shia, that's where the words came into play, like Sunni for one branch, Shia another. Yep. So Al-Mu'minin is one and Al-Muslimin is another. Is it analogous to that?
No, they were a subgroup within the Abbasid Caliphate, and they just they wanted a separate identity. They called themselves the Muslimin because the Abbasids had the title, the Abbasids had the title, the Mu'minin, the believers. So, but then the titles just swapped once. Okay. So we'll just. So now let's look at the term Malik, which comes in. We often hear the guy Abd al-Malik, Malik, and Muqarraba. So in the first millennium BC, the political leaders of South Arabia were the Maliks. You can see MLK, Malik. And they created a commonwealth occupying most of South Arabia. They took the title Muqarrab of Saba, right? The Muqarrab of the Sabaeans. Now, a Muqarriban is these are the special retainers of the ruler, the Muqarriban, right? Muqarraba, right? The Muqarraba, special retainers of the ruler. And the Muqarrab, yes?
So I was just going to ask, what is the meaning of the word? Because I have an understanding of what the word Malik means as being owner or boss.
Well, Malik, no, it's king. It has a couple of meanings, but the word means king. So within the Jewish, it means king, right? We'll have a look at it. But really, you can also derive Molech. Molech is also known as Baal. Now, Baal can be a noun as the name of a demon or name of a deity. Yep. And then you have Baal, which is the god, small g, the god of an area. So local god. The Baal of this region is called something, or Baal as an actual entity, major entity. So Molech. Malik, Molech.
That's the connection, Isn't the word Baal in context also meant owner as well?
Something like that, yeah. So
Malik, Molech, the etymology of being owner, Malik, Molek, Baal being the word for a god that was an owner, Malik being a name that is also an owner. Okay, I see it now.
Interesting. Sola Scriptura says, amazing how deceptive Muslims are. They say Allah's sixth name, Al-Mu'min, means the one who gives iman and security, which means the believer. Actually, properly speaking, technically, it means the heretic. But thank you for that, Sola Scriptura. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. That's actually very interesting. I did not know that, so thank you for that. So let's have a look. Muqarrab means unifier, right? Literally a unifier. In ancient Yemen, a sovereign superior to the kings, an emperor, a warrior, god, king. Okay, a warrior priest king, or a warrior priest king, the servant of the divine god, right? If you are the emperor, then the only one above you is your god, right? Now, many impressive buildings in southern Arabia with temples dedicated to pagan deities. The earlier rulers of Sheba, Yemen, Queen of Sheba, who bore the title of Muqarrab, combined the functions of prince and priest and warrior. They had to make war as well. So prince and priest. So Muhammad, think about it, was warrior, prince, priest. Warrior, king, priest. Now, notice Muqarrab, priest, king. Right? Muqarrab, priest, king. Makoraba. Now, the plural romanized Makoraba, Makoraba. See? It's a very simple shift. Muqarrab, Makoraba. We've got Muqarraba, okay? Muqarraba, plural. Muqarriban, Muqarraba, Makoraba, Makoraba. It's a very easy shift to make. And this is a Yemeni appellation. We've already shown that geographically it's located in Yemen. And this is the only word that exists like it, because there's no other derivation of the word Makoraba. Now, let's have a look at some more etymology around this. The term ad, okay, plural uhud, joining together, a contract. A written designation of succession left by a caliph from the time of the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik. Now, this term Abd al-Malik came to replace, because the Muslims wanted a new term. They wanted to separate also from this Yemeni identity. And because remember, the original Yemeni Kaaba was the source of that, and they wanted a new location, a new identity, a whole new history. They had to separate from that, and therefore they coined the term Abd al-Malik, the slave of the king, the Malik, the Moloch, right? The Molech. So it is not a name, it's a title. If I say the word Caesar, which Caesar? There were 12 Caesars. Which one am I referring to? Everyone goes, Julius Caesar. Yes, but there were 12 Caesars. So there were many, many Abd al-Maliks. Now, as a Quranic term, it denotes God's covenant with men and the religious engagement into which the believers have entered. Political agreements. Notice political agreements. So the believers, political religion, right? Political enactments, land which has capitulated before conquest. Now again, you've got this Yemeni concept of conquest. The priest king, the warrior priest king, who must make war. The Muqarrabs made war, jihad. And in mysticism, it is the covenant, an agreement, okay? Vows which vary in the different orders. Before I go on, your time?
From what you've been saying, and this is taken into account the previous releases of this material that you've done for your YouTube. It seems to me that this is a political ideology designed purely for conquest, but wrapped up in theistic wrapping paper.
So yeah, pseudo religion, which is utilizing the tools of religion to bind a group for political reasons. Yes. Yeah, it's a fake religion designed to manipulate. Very much for social control, because religions bind, they provide social cohesion, they provide common interests, and yes, they're utilizing that. Yes,
because everything that you're bringing out here, there's nothing theistic about it. It is purely political warfare, conquest rhetoric, with using words to bring it together under some kind of theism.
Yeah, so it's really a political. It's look, socialism was created as a religion, right? So it's a political system, or a conquest system, quite literally, which has religious trappings, because it realizes that people need some kind of system of social cohesion.
Yeah, because you say a political system with the material that you'll be discussing separate to Islam. It's when you look at Islam and atheism, they're basically the logic, the arguments, and the rhetoric they use are exactly the same. The subject material differs. But where in Islam it is a physical conquest for the heart, atheism is an intellectual conquest for the mind. But both of them are attacking God's word, the Bible.
Correct. Yes, both of them are very much anti-Christian, anti-Yahweh. Certainly. Now, let's look at the term al-Sabikun, right? It's applied to the Prophet, the Imams, and Fatima in recognition of their status as pre-existent beings and the first of God's creatures to respond to the demand, "Am I not your Lord?" Now, notice this is before the earth was made. So they're also implying here al-Sabikun, okay? Well, we'll get more into this. So let's have a look here. Mukarrab.
And just Fatima in recognition of their status as pre-existent beings. So that would imply that they were in heaven before they came to earth.
Correct.
So that would mean that none of the creatures that are born from Adam and Eve in Islamic parlance are actually the children of Adam and Eve. They are merely, if you like, transmutated
Their souls existed in heaven before they were born, yes. And they all worship Muhammad. Yeah.
So if that's the case, then how comes none of these people recognize Muhammad? How comes nobody recognized Muhammad? Because the logical implication is that all the Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, everybody that would have seen him would have known him before he came to earth.
Okay, no, because again, off time, there's always these discussions that come up. So Muhammad was placed on a pedestal, right, and he glowed with the light of Allah because he was made from the Tawhid.
Yes.
And Allah ordered all the creatures of heaven to look at Muhammad, and there were some who were obstinate, who would not look at the glory, the perfection of Muhammad. So some looked at his eyes and they became emperors and caliphs. Some looked at his nose and they became, carpenters. And some looked at his ears and they became fishermen. And then some people looked at his feet and they became, ditch diggers. And then some people just didn't look at all, and they became Jews and Christians.
Okay, so what about people that looked at his penis?
They went woke. So yeah, but something like that. So, okay, so all of this. So let's see. Isn't the caliph supposed to be priest king, leader of the believers? Correct. So exactly that's mukaraba, right? That's exactly what the mukaraba. It's the same as the Yemeni concept. Has been applied one-to-one across into this Islamic idea. Now here you've got the Mukarrab of Sabah, right? Okay, the Mukarrab of Sabah erected the wall of Wam, the house of Al-Makkah. So the Mukarrabs, right, were the priest kings like Muhammad, and they worshipped at the house of Makkah. Right? So the whole idea of Makkah, worshipping Makkah, and following the warrior priest king, right? This was a concept that already pre-existed. And they speak of the Sabikun. Al-Sabikun, foregoers, a term applied to the Prophet. Okay, so the term derives primarily from the Quran. Sabikun, Mukaribun. This is why I bring it up. The Sabikun are the foregoers, the ancestors, the ones that came before, right? The Mukaribun are remembered in the Quran as ones who, how could we not be superior to the angels since we preceded them in knowledge of our Lord? See, they were worshipping Muhammad. They knew Allah before the angels were created. So the Mukarrabun, you see, were the warrior priest kings, the special ones. And this idea of this God king became the caliph. Any ideas, any thoughts, Thunderous, before I go on?
Well, I'm trying to understand. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit slow on this, but what I'm trying to understand, because my first instinct was, well, if Muhammad was in the cave and the angel Gabriel was choking him, why did Muhammad not recognize him if the angel Gabriel was in heaven after Muhammad was created first?
Islam doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
And Muhammad, okay, but why did, I don't want to go on a tangent, but that in itself, the light of Muhammad, is a discussion that, in my opinion, Lloyd, from what you've brought down, you've clearly got some reference points for that, is a discussion in itself, the light of Muhammad being in heaven and all mankind being in heaven, because the implication is you, I, and the listening audience were all in heaven before we came down on earth having this discussion. So we would already have known who Muhammad was before we came here. So we've pre-existed, well, we've transferred from the spirit realm to this realm. How did that process come about and why?
Yeah, so we were all born Muslims, right? Because we all said Shahada to Muhammad.
In heaven. But what I'm saying is, were we created as individual souls in heaven, or did we have parents in heaven?
That's a good question. I believe individual souls, I would assume.
Okay, so why is it then that if we're all individual souls in heaven, I'm sorry if I'm going on a tangent. I'm just trying to reconcile this. Adam and Eve were rejected from heaven to earth. Why were not we?
I can answer that. I wasn't expecting the question.
No, but these are
Hmm.
logical questions to feel. So why is it then that if Adam and Eve were disobedient to Allah and they were rejected from heaven to earth, I want to ask the question, why did Allah create the earth? And if they're there anyway, but why have we subsequently, in some kind of orderly pattern, transferred from heaven to earth? What is the process there and why? And why did we have to come through Adam and Eve?
Look, those are valid questions. I mean, it's worth discussing another time because I don't want to get too dragged off
Sorry,
topic. But
that's
these
what I
are
mean.
keep those questions warm. I mean, so you know,
Sorry,
yeah.
audience.
No. These are good questions. These are really good questions. I mean, the implications here. But notice we had the word mukariban earlier, who were the servants, the ones who served the mukarib, and here you've got mukariban within the Quran as well. Understand? So the Quran has the same concept, the same idea. It's retained some of these ideas, right? So that clearly there's this Yemeni influence. Now, in South Arabia was led by a mukarib, a sovereign superior to the kings, whose name means unifier. Muhammad was a unifier. He wanted to unify everything and everyone. He was a mukarib. And so we know that the Yemenis had the mukariban. So this idea, and he had to make jihad to cause the unification, right? So, and it's like Hinduism. Uh, there's definitely a connection to Hinduism because these people were trading with India. So certainly there's definitely room for that through the trade route. Most certainly those ideas and symbolism would have traveled. And they speak of the building of the temple of Al-Makkah, the great god of the Sabans in the center of the town. So, okay, now finally to turn to more general topics, in South Arabia, the kingdom of Sheba, with its capital at Marib, was the leading state in the first millennium BC. It was formed as a tribal confederation headed by a ruler who was given the title of Mukarib. Okay, so, and the Mukaribba, there were multiple Mukaribba. You could have more than one, right? So the Mukaribba, at least the people, the place of the Mukaribba, because ultimately there were multiple Caesars, there were multiple Mukaribba, right? Solomon and Queen of Sheba. Okay, so let's not talk about Queen of Sheba, but she was from Sheba, Saban, same place in the world. Right, now where this is important, so why I gave all that previous information, right? We need to look at the word ha-minim, mukminin, and muhajirun, okay? These two are important, ha-minim and mukminin. Now, this is from the Jewish scriptures, right? From Hebrew beliefs. The Birkat Ha-Minim is Hebrew. It means benediction concerning heretics. So Birkat Ha-Minim is a benediction concerning heretics. Now, notice there's mentioned Birkat Ha-Minim is distinguished from other benedictions, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that. But the important thing is this. Menin, plural, and min is singular. So the Ha-Minim, menin, minim, right, is plural. In Islam, menin is the believers, plural. In the Jewish, menin or menim, okay, the NM, don't worry about that too much now. This is the believers, right? So, min is singular. In the Hebrew, min means heretic. In the Arabic, mukmin equals believer, the one who believes. So, the word was originally, remember, Arabic is a Semitic language, right? It derives a lot of its words from the Hebrew. And the word min, mukminin, right? The mukminin, the believers, originally was a term applied to them by the Jews to call them heretics. So mu is the prefix assigning the next word to the person, one who. So min is a heretic. And in Islam, they became believers. They said, no, we're not the heretics, we're the believers. So the Jews called them, you are the mukmin, right? You are the menin, you are the ha-minim. Ha is the, right? Ha-minim, you are the heretics. And the Muslim says, no, we are the ones who believe. We have the belief right. So they were called heretics by the Christians and the Jews. And they said, no, we are the right believers. We have the right belief. So menin is the Arabized version. So menin, okay, in the Arabic here, menin is the Arabized version of menim, meaning the heretical believers, the ones who believe in heresy. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
Well, when it says that, when the Muslims are saying we've got it right, I'm trying to reconcile out with 124,000 prophets, 123,000 came before him, and no message from any religion sounds anything like this.
Yeah. Well, so sorry. So
But they've got it right. But the point is that they've got it right. I'm trying to understand how could all the other
they're
messages...
asserting, so when they were told by the Jews and the Christians that they are heretics, so clearly, remember, there was this ecumenical movement. They had belief in one God, right? And they believed they had the correct view. And the Jews and the Christians were saying, sorry, you are not following the correct view. This is not biblical. They said, no, we are right. They were called, so the idea of the mu'minin, and eventually they had to get away from the term mu'minin, right? The believers, they had to adopt a new term, the Muslims, because the term mu'minin identified them as heretics. They needed to separate themselves from that term. They had to distance themselves. Any comment on that?
No, that's fair enough.
Does it make sense to you and the audience?
It makes sense. It's just that when you're trying to make sense with Islam in the historical context that it gives itself, trying to reconcile that is the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. So yeah, within the Jewish context, though, they were heretics, and they called themselves believers. There's another term that I discussed previously, which also has the same derivation. It meant that they were pagans, that they were heretics, and they adopted that as believers. They also turned that into the term believers. So from Mukarrab to Malik. So the term Mukarrab is Arabic, right? And it means priest kings or federators, right? In the 4th century BC, the title was replaced by the term Malik, or the king. Now, the Malik technically was Moloch, the god, right? The god. Now, the title of the ruler who held primacy over the tribes linked by a covenant. That's why we spoke earlier of the covenant, the Ad, right? The title of the ruler held primacy over the tribes linked by a covenant. This, again, is the Yemeni, Saban, pagan concept. You have a covenant to the leader, and the leader has the connection to the god, right? So that's why we brought this up. So there's a connection to the covenant. And the Mukarrab is a South Arabian hegemon. In other words, he is a political leader. He's head of a confederation of South Arabian shabs headed by the kings, the Malik. Right? Yes, so the question was, so for Jews, were Muslims wrong? But the Muslims said they were right. Yes, they were called heretics, and the Muslim says, no, we're the believers. So they took the term and they turned it into the term believer. They changed it from heretics. So they just redefined the term, which is quite typical. So now you had the kings, the Malik. So here we've got Joy McCarraston in her writing. She says, it is clear that the early 800 to 400 BC political authority resided with one leader, a Malik, or king of his own ethnic tribe, appointed as Mukarrab of a council of tribal elders. Now everyone goes, well, Abd al-Malik, blah, the Muslim, blah, 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 went to Jerusalem, blah, 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 Abd al-Malik, blah, 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 Muslim. No. Abd al-Malik, the idea of the Malik goes back to BC, to 400 BC, more or less. So this is not an Islamic term, understand. It is one of these pagan caliphs. This is a pagan caliph, the Mukarrab. So it's clear that early 800 to 400 BC political authority resided with one leader, a Malik, king of his own ethnic tribe, appointed as Mukarrab of a council of tribal elders. He issued edicts that carried out decisions by the council and presided over building projects, ritual hunts, and sacrifices. Some of the most famous inscriptions record the military conquests of Mukarrabs, who were quite successful in confederating tribal groups through the rites of pilgrimage, which was Hajj to Jabal al-Lawth, for example, and then using such social cohesion to conscript military forces. Exactly like what Muhammad did. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
No, I'm just looking at what Solar Scriptures put in the chat. She says, so basically they're using the same system as the Caesars.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that with Islam, you can see why they have the problem, because when you look at Islam, words and definitions need to be reinvented. Like monotheism, they say it's monotheism, but we all know that Islam isn't monotheistic. They have to reinvent the word miracle in their own parlance. So Malik is another reinvention of a word that pre-existed before Islam came along. It had one meaning, but then Islam comes along and they ascribe another meaning to the word Malik. So
to hide the origin, to hide the origins, yes.
So when you're having a conversation with a Muslim about these words, they can only understand it because they've only got it from one source, which is their scholars, their imams, and their sheikhs, and they're giving them the perverted, bastardized version of what the word means. Whereas the apologetics and the polemics against Islam are using historical references. So that's where the disparity lies in the conversation, because Islam is only giving the tainted, perverted version of what the words mean. Hence why you find reconciliation in the conversation.
Yeah. And the Duza says if they did pilgrimage to Jabal al-Lawd, was there a Jewish element? So yes, I mean, remember, this was an ecumenical movement where they were common believers with Christians and Jews. They believed in monotheism, but then there was a split because obviously I would assume there was a split due to the Gnostics making up their own story and no one could tell what was right. So the Muslims probably went, okay, well, we think this is right because, look, the Gospel of Matthew was probably the first gospel to travel to Saudi Arabia. And then very short order, the Gnostics and anti-Christian heretics, right? The heterodox heretics wrote their own versions of the Book of Matthew. So now you had 6, 7 different versions of the Book of Matthew running around. Thunderous, I can hear that.
Sorry.
So now suddenly we have 6 or 7 different versions of the Book of Matthew. Which is the right one? What are the right beliefs? So this would have been causing massive confusion. So they decided to go their own way. Right, let's continue. So the term hegemon is something such as a political state having dominant influence or authority over others, which is exactly what a deen is, right? You have dominant authority, you have subjugative authority, and that is defined within the term deen. Okay? Right, now let's go to Hubal, since we were talking about the Malik, right? So, the Malik, Molek and Molek, same as Malcolm, okay? Abramelech also comes into that, the term Abramelech. So, Hubal or Hubal, he who is, who? He who is. Right, let's just type that in. So the term who, so who can be translated as he who is, or, he whose name is. Right. So Hubal was a god worshipped in pre-Islamic Arabia. In pre-Islamic Makkah, there was a temple to the moon god Hubal. And Hubal was the god of, in fact, Muhammad was consecrated to Hubal as a child. So the 2 Greek manuscripts of the Periplus, that's the people who traveled, the captains who knew the waters, they had their own manual for navigation down those shores, right? Down in the waters when they were doing trading. They used the Latinized Carabel, okay? So Carabel from Carabal, from Mukarabal. So you see Carabel, Carabil. Carabili was one of these Mukaribs, right? That was actually his name, right? Carabili. So you just had Mu, one who does this, right? So the name represents a transcription of the Saban name Karabil, Karabal, blessed by or following God, one who follows Hubal. So Karabal, so the Mukaribs followed Baal, the Mukarabal, right? This was another one of their terms, Mukarabal, Mukaraban, Mukarabal. These are the ones who followed the worship of Baal. So in other words, you went from the Yemeni worship of Baal, right? Now Baal could be the god Baal with his name, or the Baal of a region is the god of a region, so the god could be Frank, okay? So the god of that region is called Frank. He's the Baal of that region. So now you've got the Yemeni Karabal, so they are following the god Baal, and the Muslims just wholesale took over this idea, so they inherited that from the worshippers of Baal. It was a name shared by numerous South Arabian rulers, blessed by or following Baal, and Hu, or Huwa in Arabic means he, as a pronoun, a name for God in Sufism, and literally Hebrew and Arabic for the English third person, and they use it to avoid attribution of a grammatical gender to Allah. So now there's another borrowing, and this time it is with Baal. Now your thoughts, Thunderous?
With the research that you found, it's very reminiscent of a book that I've got. I've not finished it because it's not a particularly easy read, and it's called The Two Babylons by Alexander Islop, and it's a fascinating history of how the Tower of Babel and Nimrod worship was grafted in on many other religions. And what the information that you're bringing out here is very reminiscent of what I've read about because one has to, if we are going to follow the biblical narrative as a reality, then Satan's real, the demons are real. Yeah. And if we're going to incorporate that reality into this discussion, then we have to say Satan has grafted these things from over time, grafted in the same things, but grafted them into different religions. Mm-hmm. These are nothing new. These are age old. And as you're going with the description of Hubal, Garabil and such, you can see the grafting in through history from one religion to another, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, if we look at Mu, okay, we had the Mukaribba, right? And the term Mukarabal, right? One who does the will of Baal, right? Mukarabal. So it's really, so this is this additional element to the etymology of this term. Hey guys, and if you're here, thank you for being here. And please do me a favor. Do like Sharia and subscribe. Let me check how many people are. Okay, yep. So now, notice there's one last thing. Hu or huwa in Arabic meaning he. Now, here's something they forgot to tell you. I just showed this a moment earlier. The term hawi, the plural is huwa, right? And the actual meaning is a snake charmer or someone who is an itinerant mountebank. In other words, a fraudster. So, yeah. So, huwa, okay? The name of God in Sufism, which is the Islamic spiritual sect, right? This is the high priests of Islam, if you will. And notice here, in Arabic, huwa means a fraudster. So a snake charmer or fraudster, someone who's a cheat. So yeah, this name is applied to Allah here. So this doesn't make any sense. So,
but in Arabic, Eve's name is Hawa.
That is, yeah, Hawa. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's exactly the same, what the derivation is, but here you've got the same. I just thought this is very, very interesting. The two Babylons exposes a lot of Babylonian worship and rituals are presented. Yes, sadly, that is true.
Yeah, I've got the book. Fascinating read. Not an easy one to read, I must say, but I've read some most of it and absolutely agree with the points of scripture. Hence why I brought it up, because I'm seeing what Lloyd's bringing out is very similar.
Yeah. Now we're going to speak briefly of the worship of Baal Hamon, the face of Baal. Okay, so now let's look at Baal. The Muslims worship Baal, and you correctly said here the Kaaba is the original temple of Hubal, who was under the care of Muhammad's tribe. Now I've gone into detail describing how often in the Islamic sources they describe Hubal as the god of the Kaaba, and Muhammad was consecrated to Hubal, right? Muhammad was dedicated to Hubal. So understand? Can you please, go ahead and translate all you like. Please do. So now notice Baal. Okay, so Baal has many names, right? Baal this, Baal that, Baal, blah blah. Now here's the Carthaginians practiced child sacrifice. Now it was considered racist back in the 60s and 70s when people were saying, hold on, these Italians, these Carthaginians, were practicing child sacrifice. They would kill hundreds of babies to their god Baal, and it was like, no, you racist. How can you say that? Well, unfortunately, after decades of scholarship denying that the Carthaginians sacrificed their children, new research has found overwhelming evidence that this ancient civilization really did carry out child sacrifice. Now, this is the very latest research. This is very detailed, and it's published in the journal Antiquity. So basically, until the 70s, right, scholars were arguing that this was simply anti-Carthaginian propaganda because these were the glorious ancestors of Rome. You can't call them that. Well, it turns out these people were sacrificing kids, okay? Even in Rome, it was legal to sacrifice to kill a child for any reason up until the age of 2. Up until the age of 2, a child was not considered human and had no rights. So you could kill them with no cause up until the age of 2. And of course, they would be sacrificing 8-year-olds. To their gods. So now the stories about Carthaginian child sacrifice is true, and this god was Baal. So Baal was a child sacrifice god. People love to claim that he was not. This is not true. Okay. Now the Phoenicians did indeed practice child sacrifice, right? And of course, this is spoken of. So detestable was the practice of child sacrifice in Israel that Jeremiah prophesied that the valley of Hinnom would become the valley of slaughter. Jeremiah 7:32. Because the Lord would judge and punish those who engaged in child sacrifice. Yeah. So they worship Baal as well. So we can only assume that to whatever degree they were practicing child sacrifice.
Yeah, this is one of the arguments that the atheists will bring out against the God of the Bible about how cruel and vindictive and vile he is and the God of war. But what they don't realize, when you ask these people, well, could you name an example as to why you think it's cruel? And let's look at the people. There was one period in history where they I think the God of the Bible waited about 200 years before he wiped out, was it the Canaanites? And the atheists say that was cruel. But what they have found since then, they have found urns with the remains of children that were sacrificed to the god Baal, and the historians and archaeologists turn and say, well, why did the God of the Bible wait that long before he wiped them out? So when is he right and when is he wrong then?
Fair enough. So hold on, while we're here, I'm going to have to find something on that since you've mentioned it. Okay, Roman brothels and infanticide. Okay, how do archaeologists know that they have found a brothel? Okay. So brothels were commonplace within antiquity and often placed in houses of respected Roman families. Now, they say here, okay, So there are two ways archaeologists know whether a building they discovered is a brothel or not. The first is by signage. Okay, so you have names and prices on one side. Okay, or inscriptions like "Tele meretritie," prostitute's cot, which marked out the purpose of the location. The other way that archaeologists know that they have discovered a brothel is the discovery of mass graves of children. In Roman antiquity, children were not considered real people until at least the age of 2, and fathers could legally kill their children without any kind of repercussions. Yeah. So, yeah, this is... So now, atheists will go, how come God didn't do anything to solve evil? Well, he went and killed them. Oh, God is evil because he went and killed those evil people who were doing child sacrifice. It's like, yeah, okay, you definitely can't make him happy. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly my point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hypocrisy, but whatever. Now, okay, so last 10 minutes, guys. Anything else from you, Thunderous, before we go on?
No, sorry.
Yeah, so understand the discovery of the mass graves of children is how archaeologists discover that they found a brothel. So clearly prostitutes got pregnant and they would, have kids and they would kill the children. So, yeah.
I suppose that would be the only way of having an abortion then at that time was to have the child and then abort it. Very much like today.
Yeah. Yeah, now they're moving towards post-birth abortion, right? So that's crazy. Now, the Quraysh had an idol by a well in the middle of the Kaaba called Hubal. Okay, this is from Islamic sources. This is from the Islamic texts, okay? And they mentioned the place of Zamzam. Now notice, Abdul Muttalib denied this, okay? But was willing to submit the matter to the sacred lot. So they used to do divination with arrows. So this was agreed, and he made 2 yellow arrows for the Kaaba and 2 black ones for himself and 2 white ones for the Quraysh tribe. They were given to the priest in charge of the divinity of arrows, which were then thrown beside Hubal. Hubal was the image in the middle of the Kaaba. No, don't forget, Allah was the biggest God. He was in the middle of the Kaaba. So Allah was Hubal. He was the greatest of their images. When they say images, they mean idol. This was an idol, right? Stone idol. It is that referred to by Abu Sufyan ibn Harb at the Battle of Uhud when he cried, "Arise, Hubal, Hubal Akbar, make your religion victorious." This practice went straight into Islam. Now, Abdul Muttalib was praying to Allah. Then they brought near Abdullah and 10 camels while Abdul Muttalib stood by Hubal praying to Allah. So this is badly written, but Allah is Hubal. Hubal is Allah. And throwing stones? Yes, exactly. So yeah, throwing things. Yeah. So this was they do divination by shooting arrows or throwing arrows. So yeah, Thunderous, any comment before I go on?
No, not at all.
Okay. Now notice, okay, you must get an arrow, write your name on it, and bring it to him. This they did, and you took them before Hubal in the middle of the Kaaba. So Hubal, the same Baal, this is he who is Baal, right? Hubal, he who is Baal. The statue of Hubal stood by a well there, the Zamzam well. It was that well in which gifts made to the Kaaba were stored. Now besides Hubal, there were 7 arrows. So Hubal was the god of the Kaaba. This was a pagan god, okay, god of child sacrifice. Abdullah was Abdul Muttalib's favorite son. And Abdullah was the father of Muhammad. So Abdul Muttalib is the grandfather of Muhammad. His father thought that if I remember, he was the father of the apostle of Allah. Abdullah was the father of the apostle of Allah, and they prayed. His father was a pagan who prayed to Baal. Abdul Muttalib stood by Hubal praying to Allah. Hubal being the greatest and most revered of the idols of the Quraysh in Mecca. Okay, and if they wanted to circumcise a boy, or make a marriage, or bury a body, or doubted someone's genealogy, they took him to Hubal. So Muhammad's father and grandfather were pagans that prayed to Hubal, to Baal. Abdul Muttalib took Muhammad before Hubal in the middle of the Kaaba where he stood and prayed to Allah, thanking him for this gift. Then he brought him out and delivered him to his mother, and he tried to find foster mothers for him. Okay, so Abdul Muttalib took Muhammad to Hubal, and he prayed to Allah, thanking Hubal for the gift of Muhammad. So yeah, he was consecrated too. Thunderous, your thoughts?
No, it's just that's the connection that sometimes Muslims don't seem to understand. That Abdullah, meaning the slave of Allah, pre-existed Muhammad's birth.
Correct.
You know, so what Allah is Abdullah the slave of?
To Hubal, yeah. Exactly. Ken Johnston, Revolut. Thank you. Much preferred, Revolut. Yeah, exactly. So Abdullah was Hubal back then. Slave of Allah. Allah was Hubal back then. And he says here, they abstained from idols, animals that had died, blood, and things offered to idols. This is taken directly from the 7 laws of Noah, right?
Yeah.
So prior to the 10 commandments, you had the 7 laws of Noah, right? Which are basically the precursor to the 10 commandments. So 5 of the 7 laws of Noah are directly from the 10 commandments. So abstain from idols, animals that had died, blood, and things offered to idols. This is taken. And he forbade the killing of infant daughters. Notice, forbade the killing of infant daughters, this sacrifice, right? Saying that he worshipped the God of Abraham, and he publicly rebuked his people for their practice. Except when they say the God of Abraham, they mean the God of Abraham before Abraham started worshipping Yahweh. This is before Yahwism. So good night, Dragon, if you're leaving us. Thank you. So, yeah. And Zayd, not one of you follows the religion of Abraham, but I. So, yeah. So they speak here of the religion of Abraham as the religion of Abraham. They're praying to Hubal, which is the religion of Abraham. So Abraham was a Saban, according to the Jews, right? He was one of these worshippers of sin, of Baal. So this was the same God, and this was the primary God of Mecca, the primary God of Arabia, the primary God of Yemen. So this is all overlapping. This God of Abraham is the same God as the moon god of Babylon. And am I to worship one Lord or 1,000? If there are as many as you claim, I renounce Alat and Al-Uzzah and her 2 daughters. I will not worship Hubal, though he was our Lord in the days I had little sense. So now they said, no, it's Allah. So you'll notice later on I'll speak about how they decide to roll all the gods into one God. That comes towards the end. All the gods get rolled into a single God, and they call him Allah. So they reject all the gods. But your thoughts, Thunderous, before I go on?
Well, no. Just as you're saying there, that the rolling of all gods into one is clearly what was taking place. And then when you consider the satanic verses, it was also the if you like, the practices of each god, because each one would have had a different kind of practice or ritual, was also all rolled into one.
Yeah. Now notice, within the Islamic sources, again, you've got Amr bin Luhay. He allegedly brought back to Mecca from Balkh, Syria, an idol of Hubal. So this Tawhid is the unification of many, not unity. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, the unifier, right? The one who unifies. That is the job of the Muqarraban, right? The Muqarraba. So they brought the idol of Hubal, the worship of Hubal, was brought from Syria to Mecca, according to this source. And according to Abu Zayd and others, idolatry is not directly opposed to Tawhid. Idolatry is not opposed to Tawhid. No one would be stupid. Yeah?
Sorry, I don't interrupt. It's just what's on my mind. Can I assume then, or can we assume, that the black stone that the Muslims kiss is what was brought to Mecca from Syria, the idol of Hubal? Is that the black stone?
Oh man, we'd have to assume that something. I mean, yeah, who knows?
Because there is something special about that stone. If they're going to kiss it and something's been brought back from Syria to Mecca, and it's called Hubal, and they're kissing it today, there's got. And I do believe. It was stolen at one point and broken and then brought back. There's some history behind the black stone as well. That is violent. So there has to be a connection with the black stone and Hubal, in my opinion, from the information you provided.
Yeah, I'm not going to go in. But just so by the way, this of course is the Kaaba in Yemen. Glorious. Definitely competes with Notre Dame for its beauty. As you can see in here, the cranes in the background, the 3 cranes in the background. Fantastic. Great stuff. And this, of course, is Muslims not worshipping the black stone, not kissing it, not licking it, not...
There was an image I saw where somebody had his tongue out.
This one here. Right there. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let me continue. Let me just finish up. Yeah. So now they say here that, oddly enough, idolatry is not opposed to Tawhid. In Islam, technically, idolatry is not opposed to Tawhid. No one would be stupid enough to identify the Creator with a piece of wood. Of course, Muslims claim that we do that, but the error of the idolaters is that they suppose that God has a form. Now, of course, God is the monad, the Gnostic monad. The concept of Allah within Islam is identical to that of the Gnostic monad, especially that of, well, a God called the One, made by a pagan in Greece. That's the story a little bit later, but yeah. So understand, so this is their issue. So they're not opposed fundamentally to idolatry, right? And let's briefly look at the origins of Hubal. In the Smithsonian magazine, right, the Nabateans worshipped powerful female deities and built lavish shrines in their honor. Archaeologists were stunned by the evidence of worship of female deities. So they were definitely worshipping female deities long before the introduction of Islam. And the Nabateans worshipped 3 female deities, Alat, Al-Uzzah, and Manat. So the goddess Alat, Al-Uzzah, the powerful one, and Manat, the goddess of fate. And the Nabateans, who lived in Petra, seem to have worshipped in particular the goddess Al-Uzza, who they termed the mightiest.
And isn't it interesting that those also could be tied in with names of Allah?
Yes, I know, but I want to show you. So actually, there's something. Let me see if I can find this one particular reference before we go on. I wonder if it is here. Let me just check if this is here. If it is, you might find it very, very interesting. But Muhammad and his wife used to worship.
Which one?
You know what?
What's first wife?
Yeah, Khadija. So hold on, let me just close that. Give me 1 second. Not that way. Okay, so Muhammad had children. Okay, so Muhammad had 2 sons by Khadija called Abd al-Uzza and Abd Manaf. Manaf is a pagan god, and Abd al-Uzza. So Muhammad's 2 sons by Khadija were named Abd al-Uzza. So he actually had a son named after Abd al-Uzza with Khadija. The son died. Okay, and the names are Abd al-Uzza and Abd Manaf. And in fact, there's a story from within the Islamic sources that he and Khadija used to pray at night to al-Uzza. So yeah, I'll pause here. We'll call it a night here. But we'll get to that later on. But yes, Muhammad used to pray to Abd al-Uzza according to the Islamic sources. So these pagan sources, so let me just go back to the National Geographic, the Smithsonian, sorry. Let me just go find that again. Here. So according to, the Smithsonian, okay, these gods were real, at least within that place in the period, and Muhammad actually, according to the Islamic sources, worshipped al-Uzza along with, and then one day he gave up and said, I'm no longer going to worship them, I'm only going to worship Allah. But yeah, that's a long story. So Mo and Khadija had idols in their houses, correct? Al-Uzza was amongst those idols. So final word to you, Thunderous.
No, I'm just amazed by the depth of research that you've done, and what you've presented this evening is 10 out of 10 as always, and refreshing to hear something new and about the history of Islam, which contradicts the standard Islamic narrative that many have been led to believe. Well done, Lloyd.
Oh yeah, hold on. So someone asked me about the thing on my. So I use Bing wallpaper. So I've got the Bing wallpaper thing, and every day it changes, and I get a different wallpaper every day. So this one is featured on Bing, Gardens of Bomarzo, Italy. So every 24 hours, every morning at 10 a.m., I get a new wallpaper. It's the Sacred Grove is called the Park of Monsters, is a monumental complex. Okay, so this guy, his wife died, and he had a whole bunch of sculptures made because of his grief, the grief at losing his wife. So he had a bunch of sculptures made that, symbolize his grief and affection for his wife. So yeah, that's what's on my background. Okay, yeah, guys. So we'll end here tonight. Thought an hour's a good time. Anything else that you want to add?
No, thank you, Lloyd.
Oh wait, you know what? While I'm here, let me do something that will you guys might find interesting. So hold on. I want to ask you this. Let me see if I have the right one. Let's find out in a moment. Okay, so guys, 5-minute bonus round. Okay, 5-minute bonus round. So guys, Thunderous, you can just hang out with another few minutes. So guys, here's the thing. This is the Humanist Canada. So this is the Humanist Association of Canada. I just chose them because what the heck? They just, okay. So this is what I'm going to be talking about soon. Now, they've got profound respect for people. So humanism is a philosophy or life stance based on a profound respect for human dignity, the conviction that we are ultimately accountable to ourselves and to society, and our worldview is deity-free, and we have to have a responsibility to lead ethical and meaningful lives without the reliance upon a belief in the supernatural. We believe that reason and science are the best ways to understand the world. We believe that dignity and compassion should be the basis for how we act towards others. And we believe in a fair and equal society. We have ceremonies, educational services. Remember, they're not a religion, but they have ceremonies and educational services. Okay, we bring humanism to communities across the country, so they proselytize, raising awareness on the national stage. They have political aims. Okay, great stuff. Fantastic, beautiful. Sounds great, doesn't it, Thunderous?
It sounds ambiguous. There's so much in there that is ambiguous that you
But
can
it sounds
reinterpret.
kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Now let's have a look. Let's read this. The 7 fundamental tenets. We must strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason.
Why?
The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. Hold on. So justice must prevail over the law.
Well, who's justice? Who determines what justice is?
And
Where
it's superior to the law. It's like the Sharia, Islamic law, is superior to the laws of the land, right? Notice the freedoms of others must be respected, including the freedom to offend, to willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of others, to forego one's own. Belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit your beliefs.
Okay.
And hold on, the spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. Okay, so guys, here's a question for you. Who wrote this? Here's the question. These 7 laws, who wrote this? Which group does this come from? We've just seen what the humanists believe, and now we're looking at this group and what they believe. They have the same beliefs. In fact, this group firmly believes in the Enlightenment principles, as do secular humanists. So Thunderous, your thoughts before I go on, yeah?
Who wrote that? That would sound like some atheistic society. It would be communism or some kind of fascist dictatorship.
Oh, yeah, that's close, but not quite close enough. This was written by this is from the the Temple of Satan. These 7 rules are written by the Temple of Satan.
No spiritual being was believed, or a spiritual dimension. I think that was one of the points that from a previous page, and it's from the Satanic Society.
This is from the Secular Human Society of Canada. This is the Secular Humanist Society of Canada. This is from the Temple of Satan. So understand, the Temple of Satan, okay, the Satanic Temple, has exactly the same ethical foundations as secular humanism. There is no difference. They all talk about, we believe in Enlightenment principles, we believe in science, we believe in reason. The difference between Satanism and secular humanism is the name.
Yeah.
So guys, these are the principles of the Temple of Satan. Just thought you'd find that interesting. I'll be talking about this in the future. So yeah, have a look here. Anton LaVey, he said that, so Anton LaVey's Satanism is atheistic, right? He described it as a carnal religion, a sexual religion. Followers believe that all gods are fictitious. Now, don't atheists believe that all gods are fictitious, Thunderous?
Absolutely.
That ultimate importance is found in the self and pursuing self-interest. Now, I had an atheist literally tell me that he is a god, right? And because that's what atheism preaches, right?
The thing is, when you go to the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 1 to 5, and where Satan turns around and says to him, "You will be like him in deciding what's good and bad."
That they are gods, that man is the ultimate.
That.
Now, notice, you can have secular symbolism. You can have ritual and pageantry. It's very effective, something that is part of the nature of the human animal, okay? You can perform what I call self-transformational psychodrama. We release the emotions that we find to be injuring us in the regular pursuit of our happiness so we can let them go. Oh, that sounds wonderful. It is not that we're just looking for disorder, chaos, and to undermine Western civilization. In fact, we are trying to endorse Enlightenment values. Now, I know secular humanists that are trying to endorse Enlightenment values. In fact, secular humanism claims to be based on Enlightenment values, just like these. And they're bringing reason and respect for science into bettering the human condition. That's the spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, Lucian Greaves.
And if you look at what they're saying, they're bringing reason and respect for science. Yet the thing is, when you look at the word reason, respect, and science, no one's determining what the word actually means. So
they define it as they go, don't they?
As they go, exactly that. So you can't use words unless you define what the words mean. And what happens is, it becomes like words are today, like the word fascist. If you use the word fascist or right wing, no one's defining what the words mean. It's thrown at per person as a criticism or a slur or a pejorative. So it's without determining what the word means now. So words have actually lost their meaning and value, and atheism has introduced that, because when you read the book Politics in the English Am I going on a little
No,
bit?
go on, please.
Because if you read the book Politics in the English Language by H.G. Wells, he actually reveals that, and this was released in 1948, that as society becomes more decadent, the language that's being used in turn becomes more base. So words, in effect, lose their meaning. And we've seen that within, say, the past 50 years, that as societies become perversely more worse and decadent and feral, we're seeing that language is exactly doing that. So
Yeah.
words are not defined anymore when they are used, and this is the classic example. And it is atheism that has introduced that.
So understand, guys, atheism and Satanism share exactly the same principles, believe it or not. So do they preach bodily autonomy? So how many of them violated that during COVID with every child? Yeah, I know, exactly. So their morality is relative, Zahar. In fact, they state that very much. It's actually stated within their credos, within their manifestos. They do state that the science changes, so we must change our minds. There is nothing that is absolute. So, guys, yeah, I just thought I'd end with this. You might find it interesting to realize that that is the stuff is word for word. I took it from this page from the Satanic Temple. So, yes, and you'll see that they are identical to the claims and aims of the secular humanist societies, who are, in Christian terms, entirely satanic. And they are entirely in keeping with the same claims made by Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Marx. They're exactly the same words. The Satanic Temple, humanist associations, and the worst genocidal atheists in history. Same phrases and beliefs. Yeah.
And I'd just like to finish on James 2:19, where it says, "You believe there's one God, do you? You're doing quite well, yet the demons believe and shudder." You know why that? Because there's no atheists in the spirit realm.
That is true. That is true. So, guys, understand what you're dealing with. This secular humanism is ultimately satanic. So, guys, good night. I will leave it here. We've gone a little bit longer than expected, but Thunderous, thank you very much. And guys, if you do like this, please share it, tell people, subscribe, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button twice. And you know, the 160 minutes, these 90 minutes presentation, I did an hour yesterday, man, off the cuff. So, guys, thank you very much. I will continue with Thunderous probably on Sunday, and I'm on Thaddeus' channel on Saturday. So, Thunderous, let's maybe do Sunday again.
Yes, we're doing Sunday. Are we doing what are we doing on Sunday?
Well, I need to finish MOONotheism. We just get one thing done, then I can do Sharia next, and then I can just hit the like button. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Well, appreciate everybody, see you again next time I'm with Lloyd, and thank you for this evening.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Good night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.